Hi everyone, this is Lori from My File Addiction. I get a lot of requests to teach classes on how to create designs using the Silhouette program. Um, it, it's difficult sometimes just to teach, a few different classes and have you guys understand everything there is to know about creating rhinestone files. So what I have decided to do is come up with a series of different videos regarding different tips on how I tackle different designs, on how different panels that you're going to use, different steps based on the details of a design, and so on and so forth. So it's I felt it's better to kind of break things down into tips, just because creating rhinestone designs is not always about following the same exact steps with every design that you're ever going to make. Sometimes we have very simple designs to make, and sometimes we have very detailed and intricate designs, and those require maybe a different series of steps to create each design. So that's why, just teaching a class is not always just, as simple as just saying, okay, this is what you're going to do, and it's going to apply to every design that you make. But over the years, I've been designing for 15 years now, or over 15 years now, and the way I design now is probably a lot different than I started out designing. Okay, so I have self-taught myself to come up with different tips and shortcuts and different ways to do different things. And some of them, may be the long way, but it gets me, it gets the design made the way I want it to be made. I try to create shortcuts, but I don't ever want to create a shortcut to create a design that's not of a quality. Okay, so it's not about a race. It's not about pushing a button and having a program lay the stones and you say that's the way they did it, so that's the way it has to be. Um, we as designers have to look at that design and say, okay, this is our starting point. This is not what we envisioned it to look like. How do we get to that final design that we envision? So that's why I'm going to break this down into multiple videos, and I am going to label them as tips. So hopefully you can write down, and follow along and say, okay, tip number 1, she talked about how to create a design this way. She used these panels. She, used these steps. That way you can always refer back to those different tips when you're struggling or you're stuck on a certain point. So hopefully you'll take notes. And I can't guarantee my design or my videos are going to be short. I like to explain things and not just say this is what you need to do. Sometimes that you need to see why things have to be done a certain way. Or I may show you, if you don't do it that way, this is the result you're going to get. Because sometimes people miss one little crucial step in the process and their outcome is completely different and they can't figure out why. Well, when you omit maybe one particular step, your results are going to be completely different. And sometimes I like to show that way if it happens to you, you know the reason why. And I also suggest, whenever you watch any of my videos, watch them all the way through first, and then go back and rewatch the video, but open up your design program. Look at what I'm doing pause the video and try to replicate it. Our minds can't remember every single thing that we talk about or we do or anything like that. But if you can follow along and you can do the same steps and maybe even take notes, you're going to learn the process a whole lot better, okay? And you're going to retain that information. And then you may one day have to not look at your notes. So, these are tips that I learned and I taught myself along the way. I used to keep a whole notepad and write everything down, and now, I don't have to do that. So, and you can self-teach yourself, different ways to do things. I'm sure there's more than one way to, get from point A to, point F. I'm going to show you my way, and my way might not be the right way for you, but hopefully you can take some of the steps that I teach you, and you may be able to create the designs a different way. But like I said, I do things a little differently and than most people probably, but I wanted to show you from my angle because I get questions daily. How do you create designs? Can you show me? Can you teach me? Do you want to do one-on-ones? Do you do classes and that kind of thing? So I decided that it's time to kind of create these tip videos, okay? I want to tell you, this is not the program that I design in. So I'm applying the steps that I do in the program that I use, and I'm applying it to the Silhouette Business Edition. Okay, so if you see, if you do not have the Business Edition, and I'm not sure what panels are available in each of the editions. I think they have 4 different ones. I know the Rhinestone panel is available in Designer, Designer Plus, and Business Edition. So you can create Rhinestone files in those 3 different versions. Some of the other panels on the right, which are these, may not be available in all the editions. Since I have the Business Edition as the very top tier, I have all of the functions available that they offer as of right now. So if I talk about something and I use a certain panel and you don't have it, you may have to upgrade your the edition that you're working on to the business edition in order to perform the steps that I'm doing. Okay, so this video is going to be basically an introduction to the business edition software. I'm going to go through the different panels that I would use the most just to create Rhinestone files. Like I said, I don't use this program, so if somebody that uses it as their main designing program and you see a different way of doing things than I do, by all means, go ahead and use your way. I'm just trying to apply what I know from my other program, which is called SignLab 10, and I'm trying to apply it to this program. So some of the functions are not quite the same, but they can achieve the same look. Okay? So I am going to go over, the first thing I'm going to go over is some settings that I recommend that you use. Some people may not realize that they have the ability to change some settings, and I feel that the settings that I have selected make things a little bit easier to perform certain tasks. So to get into this preference panel, there's 2 ways. There's a little gear here, a blue gear at the bottom right hand side of your panel to the right, and it says open preference panel. Another way is under the edit tab here at the top. You can select that, and down at the bottom is preference, or you could do a shortcut, which is Control K. So this is the preference panel, and there are all these different tabs that you can click on, and you can change different settings. I do not have the cutter. I don't have anything to do with cut settings. I know nothing about that, so I'm going to bypass some of these areas because they do not pertain to me, because like I said, I do not use this program at all for designing, cutting, nothing. So you can experiment with some of these settings and change them to see how they work best for you. Okay, so this first panel, which is just a general, this is what I have it, these are the settings that I have on here. I don't know if these are default or if I, change them at some point, but really nothing here I don't think has to do with the designing part of the settings, so you can, make any changes that you need to on this panel. There is the next one is defaults. Again, your blade type, page orientation, feel free to choose whatever you want for that. I did change this to solid filled. I think it defaulted to outline. Again, you can change your text to default to a certain style if you want. Colors for crosshair. Again, your scroll bar position, which is this little slider bar here. You can have it at the right or the left. This is the only one that I know for sure you should make sure it's set at, is your panel mode. You want it to be multiple panel mode, and what that means is you can bring up these panels and you can have multiple ones set up at a certain time. So it's easier that way. If you need multiple panels, they're right there for you instead of having to click and have one show up. Then if you click another one, that one goes, the first one goes away and another one comes up, and you're constantly clicking. So you will see in my forthcoming videos that I do have multiple panels up. It just makes it a little bit faster for you to jump from one area to the next. Okay. So the next one is display. I prefer larger buttons, easier to see, but I'm working on a very large screen also. Animation, I have it set to fast, and I don't do anything with the curve quality, but again, you can test that out. Don't be afraid to test these things out. Write down what it was originally. You can always go back to the original setting if it wasn't for, if it didn't do what you wanted it to do by making those changes. So if you make any changes, I would click apply. Right now I haven't made any changes, so those so it's kind of whited out, but it will turn blue when you are able to click that button. Import. Okay, so this is very important. When you import a design, when you open a design in the program, if you start off with the basic edition, and I see this mostly in the basic edition, I'm not sure, probably because that's the edition that everybody has to download sometimes first in order to upgrade to these other versions. But what it defaults to is, so these are different file format types that you can bring in. So the business edition, you can bring in an SVG, DXF. You can even bring in an EPS, which I'm not sure why that one's not listed, but I'm not sure what a GSD file is. But you want all of your file imports, no matter some of the lower versions might only have DXF, but you want everything to set to centered. Okay, so one of the defaults is fit to page, and the problem with the fit to page is if you purchase a file, a pre-made Rhinestone file from somebody, and it is wider or taller than your mat size that you have set up here, that this white part, this white mat right here, it's going to shrink that design and fit it on it. Okay, so when you shrink a design or you change the size of a design, it changes the size of the circles. And I get I get many messages saying the design is smaller than it should be after it was opened, and that is because it has defaulted to the fit to page. If you have it centered, that means the design will stay at the original size that the designer saved it when they made the file. Okay, so you do not want that fit to page option. So change all those to centered. And then I just have these all checked. If anything comes in at with white, I want to change it to black, just because if you have a white background page, then you won't be able to see anything that is white. Okay. Here's something you can change for your cut lines if you want to default to a certain type of cut style. So you can change that. So the next one is tools. Okay, so there's a few tools here that I feel that you should be selected to a certain type, and the rest you can just kind of play with based on what you want the function to do. So you basically, in some of these, there's two options to pick from. You have choose, select, or continue on with whatever the function is doing. So basically what that means is if you pick a function, if you pick to, let's say to zoom, okay? Basically it would, if you have it to choose select, basically what that means is if you zoomed, it would zoom one time and then immediately go to select, which is this function here, the arrow. So that means it stops zooming, okay? Or if you do continue to do that function, basically it would stay in that zoom mode or whatever mode it is, that function that you're doing, until you manually go to the select tool here and click on that to stop it. So that's the difference. So you decide what you want for each of these functions, but the only ones that I'm going to show you that I suggest that you change to help with the process of creating the Rhinestone designs. Let's see, drawing freehand, I've got it to continue to draw freehand, but that's just my personal preference. A lot of these I have done continue just because I felt it was easier to stay in that mode. Let's see. So the first one is going to be when drag selecting. Drag selecting is when you hold down the left click on your mouse and you're drag selecting like a box around the items that you want to select. I have this as select shapes enclosed in the drag box. So the two options are, and it defaults, I believe, to select shapes touching the drag box. So the problem with that one is you don't have control over what you want to select, because if your drag box accidentally touches another item next to it, then it's going to select that item. Okay, I prefer, especially because the circles are kind of placed close together, I prefer it to only select it when the entire circle is selected in that drag box. Okay, so this is my personal preference. I figure it's a little less error and you have more control over what you're selecting if you have it on where it's enclosed by the drag box. The next one is I have it as set to single bound box. You have the option, I think it may default to multiple bound boxes, not positive, but I have it set to single. When right clicking subsequent shapes, I have new shape become selected. Lasso, I don't use really the lasso tool, but the lasso is kind of like selecting a group. You can, the lasso tool is up here. You can click your mouse and draw, manually draw with your mouse around items and to select them. So I have everything enclosed. This is kind of like this drag selecting, so you can select either touching or enclosed. Okay, so the last one in here is, and this one is very important to have selected too, this option, but when pasting an option, you want it to where it selects the object that the new shape that was pasted. Okay, and you will see why when we duplicate circles, you don't want that original circle that we've duplicated to be selected. You want the new circles to be selected, and I'll show you in forthcoming videos why it's why you would have that, so you can continue to copy to duplicate them without having to do copy paste, that kind of thing. Okay, the next one is updates. You can select to have them notify you of updates, stuff like that. I prefer not to update unless I want to. Sometimes I find if you have a version of this program that works well, staying with it is sometimes better than upgrading. I recently did an upgrade because it had been quite a while since I upgraded, and when I upgraded, I lost a feature, and I reached out to the Silhouette support. They told me to wipe everything clean. I removed the program. I removed all the files, did everything they told me to do. I went in and I downloaded the newest version, started from scratch, and the feature was still missing. So I went back to an older version. Thank goodness I wrote down the version that I was using, which my current version I'm using is 4.4895. And when I updated to the version which was 4.5.180 is when I lost the feature. But anyways, especially if a new version comes out, sometimes they have bugs in them, and it takes a while for them to figure that out. The advanced tab here, again, I don't think, you may want to have, if you are for cutting, this is the only probably cutting function I'm going to tell you to have checked would be the software overcut. This allows you to cut a circle and with a slight overcut, so that circle is cut complete, okay, or shape or whatever you're cutting. So you want to have that checked. Okay, so anything that you changed, you hit apply, and then you would hit OK. Okay, so now I'm going to go over the different panels that you would use to create rhinestone designs. Okay, the first one, I'm going to start at the top here. So the first one is this color palette right here at the top. And this is select by color. So you will see in the videos that I will make, I like to design in different colors because I can go to this panel, and if you have the by fill option selected, I think it will default to the by line, but you want to go over to by fill. It will show you the different colors that you have on your workspace area. Now, I did notice if you just changed an object to a certain color and you brought up this palette, there is a bit of a delay. So don't freak out if the color that you see in front of you, red and blue, but say it only showed blue right now, but I could, because I just changed that star to red. For some reason, it just doesn't show up right away. Okay, so give it a moment, give it some time, maybe do something else and wait for that color to show up if you want to select a group of objects. But I like to design an area in using a certain color, and then if I move on to a different area, a lot of times I will change those circles to another color. And that allows me the freedom to say, okay, if I want to take that whole area that's colored in blue and move it over, or make a change to it, I can grab everything at one time. Okay, so if you have everything colored the same, you either have to start selecting individual circles, or you have to try to drag select and just select a few, or whatever. But that's, like I said, that's just the way I design. So you take this information that I'm going to tell you and you apply it to however you want to start designing and your techniques, but I'm just showing you what I do. Okay, so I find that this is very helpful, and I have these two options down here checked also, but not current layer only. So I'm not quite sure what that function is, but I don't have that one checked. Okay, so starting from the top here, okay, and this is when I went into that preference panel and I had where multiple panels can be brought up. This is, if you have that selected, this is what you can do. See, I can bring up more than one panel. I can move them around. I can go, put it over here. You can stack them, and that kind of thing. So that function allows you to do that. Okay, so the next one is your page setup. This is, you can change your workspace to different sizing, show cut border if you want to, which is this red line. For me, it doesn't matter, but when you're cutting things, you want to stay within that red line range, so you might want to have that checked. The next one is I prefer not to have anything to do with snap checked, because that only allows you'll see when you have if you show grid, your objects will snap to these lines, and it doesn't give you the freedom to move it exactly where you want it to go. So if you find that it's snapping to these grid lines, come in this panel, the second one here, and make sure you have all your snapping deselected. Okay. Show guides, and show grid. You might want those. Ruler up at the top. If you want that, or I didn't have it selected, but like I said, I had to clear out my version, and so when I had to re-download an older version again, I lost a lot of my settings that I originally had. So ruler is obviously one you want. A lot of people have once in a while these crosshair. This will happen. They're like, how do I get rid of this? This is how you get rid of it. And this second, and just deselect that, and you no longer have that. Tolerance, enable smart snapping. You don't want that. Anything to do with snapping, like I said, you want to have that deselected. You can change the size of your boxes. So if you know, I have them set at 1 inch, and then you can have you can change it from 4 to, you can have it, change these box sizes. And basically it's your, basically if this is 1 inch, then it only shows the 1/2 inch. If you have it set to 4, it's every 1/4 inch. Okay. And the last one is registration marks. I have nothing to do with that, so right now I have everything just shut off. Okay, so I am going to take that box out. I'm going to remove the select by color. Next one is color palette. I would probably have this up a lot, only because, like I said, I design in different colors, so I want to be able to select different colors easily without having to, select this panel all the time to bring it up. Let's see. Next one you may use is your trace. You want to start out with a vector object, and if you bring in a JPEG or a PNG you cannot stone from it. You cannot use the Rhinestone feature to apply stones to it, I should say. You have to turn it into a vector object, so you would have to trace the details and turn it into something that is like this, that has basically, your cutter can cut this object out. Okay, so that's called a vector object. The next panel that you're going to use, obviously here's your text panel. You would use that if you're typing out text. This panel is a transformation panel. Okay, this allows you to take a couple of objects and align them. So if I wanted to take, align 2 circles or these 2 stars, and I wanted them to be lined up at the bottom, I would hit align bottom here, and it brings those 2 objects and aligns them up. Okay. You can bring them to, a center point, put them on top of each other, that kind of thing. Also, spacing. So when we are designing with creating Rhinestone files, adjusting your spacing is key also. I see this kind of all too often. When the Rhinestone program applies the circles, there may be areas that you have to go to in order to that needs some tweaking. Okay, so the circles aren't kind of spaced out evenly. You should go in, and what you're going to do is you're going to you can respace on a horizontal line, which is this going from left to right or right to left, or you can do it, let's see, vertically. Okay, top to bottom. So basically what you would do is you would select the items that you want to respace, the objects, and this would be horizontal, and see the 2 end objects stay in the same exact position. Everything in between will be adjusted. So that's how you would respace horizontally. vertically, it's like this. Okay, so that's vertical. Once in a while, if you have something slightly on a curve, so if you had, say, 3 circles that were on a curve like this, sometimes it will allow you to do it. So I would hit vertical, and it respaces them pretty well. But if it's on a real big curve and you were kind of like this, let's see, let's put that there. It may not see it adjusted the spacing between these two, but obviously these two are a different spacing. So it tries to do the best that it can, but it's really, you've got to, you would have to manually adjust those spacings when it gets to, you're trying to adjust the spacing if it's too much of a curve kind of thing. Okay, so that's your transform panel. The next one is what they call a replicate panel. And what you would do in this, not so much, you're not going to use the duplicate in this panel. You would go to the advanced panel, which is the center one here, and select on that. And basically we're going to be using this last function here, and select that one. This allows you to tell it the spacing that you want to duplicate each object. Okay, so I will go a little bit more in depth on this panel as I'm using it, and I'll show you, but basically we're going to be plugging in some numbers here, and I'll show you, how the objects will be duplicated based on the number that you plug in here. Okay, so this panel, for the original, the first function that is selected here, you would use this for mirroring. So you can, if you wanted to duplicate and you wanted to say this object was stoned and you wanted to create a mirrored object of it, or a mirrored copy of it, you can use this. Going right or left, or up or down. Okay, we don't so much worry about the rotate copies because, like I said, I'm showing you only using circles, so if you rotate a circle, it's still in the same position. Okay, so that is basically the replicate panel and different various functions you would use under that. The next one is an offset. So sometimes we want to manually create our own offset, either on the outside of an object or on the inside. So your offset for the outside would be this first one. Okay, you can designate the exact distance that you want it to offset to. You can decide whether you want a pointed corner. See how it's more of a point here, or rounded. Okay, and if you want to create multiple offsets, let's see, I think you keep hitting the offset. Yes, you keep hitting the offset and it creates multiple offsets with the same distance. If you wanted to do it on the inside, let me make this larger. Same thing, you want to select the internal offset. This one doesn't, for some reason, give you a choice of corner, but again, you can do this and create your offset going on the inside of your object. Okay. Let's see. Now we go down to the actual rhinestone panel, which is the the last panel that we're basically going to use here. So when we open this up, this is what our rhinestone panel is. It has certain default, I think it defaults to an SS10, which is a stone size. That's your basic stone size that everybody wants to use, but obviously you can change your stone size based on different details. Sometimes you have to go to an SS6. If you cannot achieve or start out with something that's a little bit clearer, sometimes you have to go to an SS6. I know people don't like to design in them because they're very small, but sometimes small details require small stones. It's just the way it is. These are your different fill and outline features. The first one is basically kind of clears everything out. It's none. So if you had a fill feature you were working with, you didn't like it, and you wanted to start from scratch, you go back to this none. It clears it out, starts all over. The first fill feature is your basic outline, okay? And the next one is a fill, and it's a linear fill, so it basically creates rows and rows of horizontal lines. This is not my favorite fill style, only because it does not keep the outside shape looking nice. Okay, does a good job on the inside, but the outside is less than perfect for sure. So I do not use this unless I am sometimes just designing a box or something that has very straight sides, very straight horizontal and vertical lines. Anything that has a shape to it, I like to use what they call the linear fill, which creates the outside shape first and basically goes in. So when we created this offset, basically a linear fill creates these imaginary lines and places those stones on it, and it works from the outside in. So the inside of your object may be less than perfect, okay? And that's because it is basically run out of space for the offset, the spacing that we have given it to use, okay? So it's my favorite one, but it does require you to do a little bit more cleanup on your part, but I think it gives you a nicer looking design than the linear fill. And linear fills should not be used on anything, designs that have curves to them, because you get flat lines. And I will explain that in forthcoming videos too. Just I will go over all these different fills, when you shouldn't use certain styles. Spacing. Okay, the next thing is, before you select any of these, you need to change the spacing. I wish this was an option to permanently change the default spacing in this program. Maybe one day they'll add it, but as of right now, they have not. The spacing that Silhouette has, 0.039, is way too far apart for your stones. Your goal is to create as solid of a design as possible without compromising and having your template material tear. I will be doing a test cut video to show you how to set up test cut boxes. You will set up different boxes with different spacing between your stones, cut them all out, and see which spacing works best for you. But 0.039 is just way too far. So unfortunately, every time you shut down the program and reopen it back up, it will default to this. But if you jump from tab to tab and you shut down just your rhinestone panel and reopen it back up, whatever you've changed it to should still be in that panel, okay? So my recommendation for a starting point is 0.025. Okay, that should allow you to, let's see if I go back. Okay, see, you probably couldn't tell, but now this design has, I should have made a copy of it. I still can, I think. If I go back to 0.0. Look at the difference between the two. This one has a total of 422 stones, and this one has a total of 365. This, when you placed on a solid background, you're less likely to see the shirt showing through versus this. The shirt color can cause a distraction from your rhinestone design. So you want to avoid that by placing your circles closer together. Okay? White shirts are probably the worst for causing distraction. White or very light colored shirts, because the brightness of that shirt trying to peek through those circles is going to mute your design. Okay? So in order to avoid that, you need to make that design look as solid as possible. So when you see a solid object before you've turned it into a rhinestone design, this is just way clearer to look at because it is one solid piece. And if you go up to this is where I had the 0.025. You can see it looks more, the background is less distracting. But when you go to this one that has farther spacing, the distraction, the background is more of a distraction. You see that background pop through way more than any of these objects. Okay, so you need to do your test cuts to find out how close you can get those stones together, and keep your template material from tearing, and it creates a better quality looking design. Also, tighter spacing allows you to do sometimes a little bit smaller details better. You get a better fill on them. Sometimes you still have to go to a smaller stone, but you have the capabilities of filling that smaller object when you can get more objects within a certain area. This one, you can see more spacing creates the filled object with lesser circles. Okay, this one definitely has more circles to it. So that is a tip that you're going to have to kind of remember every single time that you launch your program, to change that spacing. But it can be changed as long as you don't release your stones. Once you release your stones and you are out of the rhinestone mode, now if you can't change this object. Okay, so once all these are individual objects, now if you were to change this design, now what it does is it kind of messes up your it kind of messes things up. You do not want, you can't change this design and keep your spacing. It starts duplicating rhinestones after a while. So you want to make sure you make any adjustments to your design before you release it. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what it's doing here, but it gets kind of funky looking. Okay. So that's another thing that you want to make sure that you don't. You want to make sure you have your design the size that you want it before you release the rhinestones. Okay, so I think this is it. So this is kind of just a general go over the different functions and the different panels that you will be using. So like I said, if you don't have the business edition and you have the designer or designer plus, you want to make sure you have the panels that I am kind of suggesting that you use in order to create rhinestone files. And some of these other ones, these other panels work for different functions for creating other types of designs. So I hope you will enjoy all the tips and the different videos that I'm going to make. Please make sure that you like and subscribe to my channel. This way you will be alerted every time I release a new video. And hopefully we will get you guys up and designing in no time, and creating those quality rhinestone files. So thanks for watching.